So good morning, everyone. How are you guys? Good?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's really
We're great! Assistants, can you just come up with the mics, please? I think it's useful to start off with a kind of Q&A session in terms of your experiences over the last few days. So the good, the bad, the ugly, the questions, the answers, epiphanies.
You said yesterday that there are stories that have no point.
Mm-hmm. I did.
That's
Was there a point in the question?
Yes, that's because that has not been my experience. That even in stories without a point, there's something happening.
The stories that have no, when I say they have no point, it means when they come to an end, it's an anticlimax. It's like you expect a big, final clash of heroes and so on, but nothing really happens. Those are the stories where all the fun of them is really the telling of it, the actual journey. Hence the monastery story, which the ending of which is of course pointless, useless. It has no meaning. But actually the fun of the story is just how you get engaged in the excitement and the drama and all the things that happen in between. So that's kind of what I mean by pointless. Not that the storytelling itself is pointless. It's that you're free from the tyranny of having to make a dramatic ending. And I mean, go ahead, sorry.
What's your name? Mia. Once upon a time, I used to believe that my NLP trainers, who shall remain nameless, told really purposeful stories, and that they thought it all out really carefully, and they were so clever to, create these elaborate tapestries of stories. And in some ways that was a bit of a problem for me because, I heard stories about all the things that they'd gone and done, and I thought, well, if they can do it, I can too. And I went out and did it and tried it. Whew.
Yeah.
Well, I learned quickly.
It's called artistic license.
Yeah. And then I realized that if you put enough complexity together, if you put enough stuff out there, then you naturally get interesting resonances occurring between the different stories that you're telling that come because of the connections that you make. And more importantly, every single person in the audience takes their own specific lesson from a particular part. They go, I know what he was trying to do there. That means that. That's very clever. Yeah, that's very clever. Oh, how did he know? And they come up to you and they go, that's amazing. How did you know that? And you go, yes. If you want to encourage mystique, if you want to be honest, you go, I don't know. Well done. Thank you for getting that lesson. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Over there, another mic somewhere. Okay.
I was reminded of something that was said yesterday about the notion that if you ask someone what their favourite book was from early childhood, you often get a sense of what their life is like. Have you come across that before?
Oh, that's priceless. Thank you, Glenn.
Kind of goes into what we'll be talking about today. So,
can you give an example? For example, I remember, because my name's Robin, and at school, my name's Robin Manuell, the guy before me, when they called registration, was called Christopher Lee. So when they called out the register, it was always Christopher, Robin, and then we'd both go, yes. And now my life is strangely like wandering through the woods with little Piglet by my side. I think, especially when they remember that, and it's made a powerful impact on them. And it's not funny. Like when I first came to England, the first things I remember, the first images, some of the earliest images of fiction that I have in my mind are a little poem or nursery rhyme. The two of them, actually. One of them is Who Killed Cock Robin? Do you know that? And the second one is something, how does it go? I'll have to go into a trance to find out. It's about Robin hiding his head under his wing when the winter comes. And Robin Hood. I identified with all those books, and I've been hiding in the woods, stealing from the rich to give to the poor ever since.
Yeah. Watch your wallet, see if you have any money today. You're on notice.
Oh, yeah. Or if there are bandits outside that kind of mug you, they're my men in green. Thank you, Glenn.
Now that we know your criminal past. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Yesterday, we were sharing stories, and it's like my partner shared a story, then it sort of triggered up another story within me, and then it bounced backwards and forwards between the two of us, really getting a close connection.
That's exactly how it works. Thank you for sharing that.
It's Michael, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, if there's one thing I hope you will go away from this weekend with, it's that this is how we communicate. This is naturally what we do. And, the process of becoming better as a storyteller is simply, and better at presenting yourself in a way which is congruent with your true values and effective at influencing and persuading people in the world, is simply just becoming conscious more of what you're doing, and then handing it back over to your natural sense of what works. Thank you.
Any more? One more over here. Orestes over here.
Thank you. I was just wondering a little bit about how humor gets into the stories. Do they have to be a humorous story from the beginning, or it's just like, when you see a completely composed person, and then he goes, I don't know, that is just like when you relax a person, just like hitting them in the head, in the brain with the brick, and then just acting like it never happened. So it just pops out.
So here's my take on humor in general. First of all, things that make things really funny is if you go first. In other words, if you find it hysterical, people just get pulled into that, right? So you have to be able to appreciate their own humor of the situation too. As a rule, I think that a lot of humor comes from, in terms of the physiology of it, there's a part of your brain called the amygdala, which deals with novelty. And when something new happens, it kind of just pays attention to figure out, is this dangerous? Should I start getting afraid and run or fight or something like that? And if it's not dangerous, then all that psychological energy has to go somewhere. And I think that usually gets sort of dissipated in humor. So if you get surprised by something, have you noticed how when people get really surprised, they start laughing? Occasionally, if they really get surprised, they start crying and laughing, and they're not quite sure they're happy or unhappy about it, right? So, we're not here doing a stand-up comedy shop or workshop or anything like that. Not that I even could. But if you lead the mind down a particular path and suddenly switch directions, so unexpected, that's where puns come in, where they think they're hearing one thing, but actually you're saying another. Then that novelty, that surprise, that can be where the humor comes in. So you don't have to have humor all the way through. In fact, you can tell a very serious story and then just pun at the end, and then that's where people really kind of start laughing. If you think about it, the monastery story was pretty serious throughout. There wasn't a huge amount of humor in it. And it wasn't until right at the end that you had the choice of either lynching me as a mob or laughing. I'm very happy you chose laughter, because I wasn't entirely sure, to be honest, which way it would go.
We had actually arranged an escape plan.
We had. There's the reason for this curtain is there's a big old door back there and some big men with guns.
Car, engine running.
But then you have the other side, of course. We have stories like the one Robin told, which was in itself actually quite tragic, but all the action within it was humorous. It was caricatured in many ways as exaggerations that really took you different places. And you can clearly see that Robin enjoyed telling the story whilst doing it. So I think humor is more complex than just say, oh, you have to start with the joke right from the beginning. It has lots of different ways of doing it. Really just go with what's there for you. If you've got a more quiet and sedate character, then you can be the straight man. You tell a quiet, sedate story, and at the end of it, people go, wait, no. And it's suddenly, slowly, the penny drops, and suddenly they're rolling on the floor laughing. If you're more of a comic character, you know, the Joker, jumping around, teasing people, and so on, then that's kind of more the kind of story you'll tell as well. So, you know, I'd say, of course, you know, stretch yourself at some points, but then if you're really telling a story for influence, for the humor value of it, tell it within your own character and what amuses you, and it tends to amuse others as well then. Does that help?
The strategy Igor mentions, you know, if you find something funny yourself, do you know there's a British, Scottish comedian called Billy Connolly? Has anyone heard of Billy Connolly? I think that's his style of comedy very much. Is he gets into telling a story and he finds it funny, and he thinks nothing of kind of like cracking up to himself on stage about the joke. But to get practical, the cat story, for example, I'd never told that story before. I mean, it literally happened last week. And I kind of knew that it was, you know, I could see that it had potential. I had this central idea because I did actually end up in my bedroom with the curtains closed and the door closed, thinking, oh my God, you know, I'm being stalked by a cat. Is this guy going to come around? You know, and I just thought, and at the time I was like, this is ridiculous. So this has got to be there's got to be some mileage in this. As I started telling the story, I had no idea which bits you'd find funny, which bits you wouldn't. It's just simply when you did laugh, I noticed it. Sometimes repeated what I was doing, reincorporated it later. It's in the rapport and the relationship that you build up with the audience. Now, what I did, until about 2000, and when did we do the John Grinder training?
3, 4.
It all seems so long ago. Yeah, no, I think it was 3 or 4. So about 2001, 2002, I did the training with Bandler. Oh no, I did that was the master prac. I'd already done the trainer's training before then. And got the whole modeling thing down to pat. One of the first things I did, because I never thought that I was funny. I didn't, you know, I thought I told good stories, but I didn't experience myself as a funny person on stage. I didn't think that I could make people laugh particularly. And I went out and I got a whole load of videos. Billy Connolly, Bill Hicks, Eddie Izzard, just a whole bunch of comedians. I sat down, I put myself in a modeling state, trance state. I watched the videos through. I gave myself hypnotic suggestions to, you know, to learn and to identify with those role models. You know, I did that. I actually locked myself away for a week with those videos. I did it every day, so it was a very intense learning. And then for the next month or so, I was coming out with routines, practicing some of the things that I'd heard them do, finding myself, you know, coming out with their voices and their mannerisms and things like this as I was experimenting in public. And over the course of, you know, 2-3 months, people started laughing at me. I mean, in a good way. And so, you know, I don't think I was very funny until about 2002. And now I do think I am quite funny.
I think she agrees.
Yeah. And you'll notice if you watch, I mean, Eddie Izzard is a master of anchoring and reincorporation. He tells a fantastic, you know, he'll do a whole load of routines, and each routine he'll come up with a little mime or something, you know, random, and then at the end he'll tell a story, and he'll put all of those little mimes into the story. So he's basically re-triggering all of those anchors. If you watch Ken Dodd with his tickle stick, again, he is doing this, waving at the sections of the audience that are laughing to his responses. He is anchoring that laughter. You'll see some comedians doing it with tapping the mic. You'll also see them, a favorite thing is they'll steal the previous comedian, something from the previous comedian's mannerisms or set. And and step into the into the laughter and the appreciation that the previous speaker has got. So if you want to be funny, take a look at that and maybe try some deep trance identification.
Any other questions or comments to get the morning rolling with? All right.
Well, I'm just so glad that our teaching is so complete that you don't feel that you need to learn anything more.
Well, we may as well do something more. More to be learned despite all the things they have.
Excuse me a minute.
So whilst we hope and pray that Robin stays alive. Oh, we have no more question? Okay.
Just a very quick one. Are we going to be doing something called trance words today? Or is that a premature question? Because the query specifically is, when you're listening to somebody and you're developing that deep rapport, there are certain keywords that they're dropping in that are subconscious, that are activation words, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it felt amazing, or it was such a wonderful feeling, for example. Those words will slip right through, if I understand correctly, which they're subconscious when you repeat that story or echoes of that story back. So we're going to be covering that today, or?
One of the things we're about to come on to is how, in fact, it's taking that idea a step further, and how can we take the actual raw material that's inside their mind, that unconscious territory, that they're responding to without realizing, and work that into your stories so that the story actually feels more like their story. So the language is going to be part of it, but really it's about the whole metaphor behind it. It's kind of more coming onto the question he was asking here. If you can recall the stories you told yourself as a child, you're probably living them right now, right?
Yes. We'll be doing a lot more of that today. Yeah.
Any other questions? So we might as well begin.
Yeah, before we step off with some content, can I just suggest a little exercise just to warm us up a bit and get us started? So get on your feet. Just shake it out a little bit. Give yourself a...
Oh, here we go
That's
again.
it. Remember those hips. We're not going the whole Tony Robbins way. But what I'd like you to do is just turn to the person on your left and say hi, say good morning. And
if there's no one on your left, go the one behind you. There you go.
Yeah. And share just one thing that
Person
you've...
next to you is enough.
Yeah. Share one piece of learning, one major piece of learning that you can take away and use from this weekend. Go.
All right, guys. So now that you're nicely warmed up, yesterday you told a bunch of stories. Is that correct? You did the day before. And did you notice that some of those stories really hit home and you went, oh yeah, I can tell a story. And some stories were like, nah, there's something missing here. They're not getting really engaged, not really interested. What do you think might be happening there? Hands up and we'll bring the mics around. Go ahead, over here.
The content of the story is not resonating with the audience?
That's a very nice word, resonating. Why do you think that might be?
It doesn't match their experience?
Right. Because it's your story, not their story, right?
Yep.
Not only does it not match their experience, but it may not be relevant right now to their immediate needs. Like the nested loop patterns that we used, Rita was strangling, getting to strangulation point by how many was it? But you were kind of layering it on thick there, weren't you? Yeah. But I don't know whether you've noticed, but I used to be, I used to have this magical ability I could just sit down anywhere and I'd attract some crazy person to sit next to me. Oh. And it would be like the Tramp, and they'd sit down and they'd start rambling away, and You know, they'd start telling me about one story, and then they'd segue onto another one, and then another one, and another one, and I'm kind of losing the plot, and I'm wondering why I'm here, but I'm still listening. Because actually, I discovered that you could learn some really interesting things about people by actually paying attention and listening. But yeah, you know, you get into that sense of frustration of, yeah, I've kind of got to go now, but I can't go because you're in the middle of a story, and it'd be rude to interrupt you. And so, you know, I hadn't learned at that point to just go, I'm really sorry, I just have to go. Or something. You know, plan your escape route in advance. Yeah. And there's actually a video on my blog about this. I think there's 4 elements to ensuring that your story is congruent with that other person's experience and draws them in. 4 simple elements. The first is, if I could have the beautiful Igor help me here. What are they again? Oh yeah, passion. And there I'm referring to the same passion that I mentioned in the earlier 5 elements model. That it's your passion. If you have passion for something, that is often enough to engage people, because they're thinking, where does that come from? Where's this going? People often... we have a kind of a box that we put around ourselves that limits what we're prepared to express, how far we're prepared to go. And if you can step outside that box, one of the most powerful things that you can do as a storyteller, I think, is by going somewhere vulnerable, you know, whether it's tears, whether it's laughter, whether it's anger sometimes. By going far enough out there, you give other people permission to follow you. And that's a very powerful thing. At the same time, you have to keep the ongoing rapport, which would be the second element. And by rapport there, I mean everything you know from your NLP and hypnosis training, the unconscious interplay of posture, gesture, non-verbal communication that goes on between you as you work together. Mm-hmm. The third element is jeopardy. Any ideas what I mean by that? Sorry? Jeopardy, danger. Yeah, it's how much have I got to lose? Risk. Yeah. What's at stake here? The more there is at stake. This is why movies are typically about, you know, the end of the world, or saving somebody from being murdered, or, you know, it's what's the jeopardy? And it gets, you know, I don't know whether you guys are fans of Doctor Who. That was always one of my favorite ones when I was a kid, and maybe I still watch a few episodes now and then. Maybe can I get there on a Saturday, I sit down, I turn it on, there's a new episode, popcorn. And, you know, every episode, the end of the world is at stake, you know. Doctor Who has to save the universe from the invasion of aliens, and it's all, whoa. You know, I don't know how they managed to save the universe. How many, for like 40 years, every week, it's... I mean,
thank God for Doctor Who.
Thank heavens he's around. Yeah.
Let's us go home and eat ice cream and know that we're safe.
So you might have, you know, stories about, oh, you know, I was present when a volcano erupted. You know, I was hanging by my fingernails from the edge of a cliff, looking down, wondering what was going to happen next, and how I'd get out of this situation. I was told I had an incurable illness. Jeopardy. What's at risk? What's to lose? And that fourth frame, relevance. How is this relevant to the person I'm talking to? Now, we're all human beings, aren't we? Are you sure about that? And so we share a certain set of universal experiences. We were all born. Most of us had parents at one time or other, certainly primary caregivers of one kind or other. We all had some kind of experience with the education system. We've all fallen in love. We've all been afraid. These are universal human experiences. No?
Fear? No?
Sorry, I just imagine my daughter then. She chases me down the street going, I'm a lion, Daddy. Of course you are, darling. If you can get all of those elements into your story, then you're away. And the question is relevance. How do you know what's relevant? People tell you.
Without telling you directly.
And in some situations, they'll tell you because they want you to help solve a problem, because they're sharing. In other situations, you're playing a more active role in wanting to be able to influence them, whether because you're, leading a change process, you want to get a team together, you want to sell something. And in those situations, it's really important to consider what the world view is, what the Weltanschauung of your audience is.
For our German audience.
That's good. He knows how to spell it.
I also know how to say it.
Over to you, Igor. Think about an example that may relate directly. How many of you do stop smoking? Right. Or weight loss?
Any kind of hypnotherapy?
Your client, when they come in, will be telling themselves a particular story about,
I've tried 5 times already and I just can't quit. It's so hard. It's just constant battle against these cigarettes. I just fight it and I fight it and
okay.
I always lose.
There's some key words in there. Can anybody tell me what they are? Battle, fight. Right. So what's the underlying worldview there? It's battle, struggle, fight.
It's a war.
It's
right?
a war. I know it's been hard for you, hasn't it? And you've probably had, opportunities to, you've had all these battles to stop, and yet you haven't given up yet. You still want to win the war, right?
I do, but I keep getting defeated. Oh, it's painful.
Yeah,
I'm ready to give up almost.
Well, I'm really glad you've come here today, because this is going to be an opportunity to really rally your forces together, get the supplies you need in place, and set things up so you have a well-coordinated plan of attack. You may or may not choose to use that particular approach. You might choose to reframe that story in the first place. But you get where I'm coming from. People will drop certain key words that give you clues to their entire metaphorical landscape. And it's also affected in that it'll also come out in terms of their motivation. Why are they here? Do they want to stop smoking because it's their health? They're concerned about their health. Is it because they see themselves as family is really important to them, and actually they're doing it for their kids?
Very common.
Yeah. So you really want to be able to find and address what that world view is. Clear? Cool.
So Robin, how do we do that?
Well, let's start with a simple exercise. And let's consider, just have a quick minute each way, in pairs, situations where you've missed it.
Where you've talked to people, and thinking about it now, looking backwards on it, they probably offered you on a plate what their perception was, the worldview. Were they on a journey? Were they fighting a war? were they nurturing a garden or a family of some sort? They presented to you their perception of the metaphor underlying whatever the situation was, but you missed it, and you maybe ran with your own, and so there was a clash of some sort.
Consider the alternate as well, where somebody's said something to you and missed your worldview.
Oh yes. Easy. Just spend a minute, find a partner, off you go.
So with the same partner, just to keep it simple for now, what I like to do is take it in turns to one of you come up with a problem area. It may be a genuine problem, it may be something that you make up.
If you make it up, just think of a specific person who generally has that problem, just so you can channel it more effectively, so you get more of a sense of the kind of answers they would give.
So you're like person with problem, coach for now. Coachee and coach. As a coach, I want you to ask one simple question. So this whole problem in your life, the reason that's brought you here, what's that like?
I note how he's taking the whole problem to encompass the whole situation, which already goes to the more of a global view. And he's not asking for any content. He's not asking for any details. What do you do? What happens?
Well, let's find out what comes out when you ask that question. Go.
Easy. 2 minutes apiece, please. Off you go. So how did I go? What kind of interesting symbols did you get? And, of course, some of you are still getting. What kind of things came out? Over to you guys. This is the interactive portion. Hands up. Go ahead, over here with the resties. Oh, we'll come over to you in a sec. Go ahead.
Well, I thought it was a great question. What's the whole thing like? It was a great question to find out what modalities do people.
Thank you. What answer did you get?
What answer did I get specifically?
Yeah.
Inner feelings.
Okay.
So you got like an emotion thing?
That's not what we're looking for.
Right.
So okay. No, that's okay. I mean, this is the purpose of this exercise, is because people will typically respond in certain ways that aren't what we're looking for. And so thank you very much for giving us one of those examples.
Let me ask you this. At any point, whilst they're talking about the feelings and so on, did something symbolic at any point slip out?
No.
No?
Okay, thank you.
That's what we're hunting after. So we'll get some more examples so we can get as a group an idea of what we're talking about. Orestes over here, and then we'll come over there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You've been hijacked. Go on.
For me, I had a really tough time even understanding the exercise to begin with, because, they're saying, okay, well, how do you feel about that, or what's your view about that? And it's like, well, I have no context in which to put it in.
Okay. So this whole problem or area that you chose to focus in this exercise, whether it's real or imagined, we don't need to know. What's that like for you?
Well, I told him it's frustrating because I don't know what is expected.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. You're telling me about your feelings. I didn't ask you that. What I asked you is, what's it like?
What's what like?
So
what's this whole situation in your life like?
The problem situation.
I'm still not.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's get the next question.
Actually, no, let me just grab the thing again just to help you out on this. There are many ways you can think of something being like. You can feel it, you can talk about other situations which are similar and so on, right? So what we're interested in right now is, if you were going to give us an analogy, what would it be? What scenario, what scene, what kind of world would best represent what the problem would be like? So, for example, you know the film Forrest Gump?
Yes.
Life is like a box of chocolates?
Yes.
It can be like a lot of other things too.
Okay.
So what's your problem like?
Oh, so you're...
Yes,
I think
that's it.
you want me to extrapolate and say...
Now you're getting it?
Some sort of analogy about my worldview.
So what is the problem that you're thinking about, that you're talking about with your partner? What would that be like? If it were like anything.
Let's move on. You ponder that one. Move on. Thank you.
So
Go for it.
Before I start talking, this is an important step right now, because we're getting past the the normal social interaction element into somewhat more unconscious territory, which is why sometimes it's a little difficult to get there. But the story is classically there because otherwise you wouldn't have the problem, right? And it's important to make that next step because that's where you really connect to the kind of stuff that was being asked about earlier on over here, which is the really unconscious material, right? Go ahead.
I just would like to share something that was in the first exercise when we were thinking about what's not happening, what's not helping, and it made me realize something that may be of importance to you, and I'm willing to share that even though it's kind of a bad thing for me.
Thank you.
Because I wasn't, my stop smoking clients were not very, very successful. I would say just about a 50%. And that's happened, now that I realize, it happened ever since I read a very famous Englishman that has been very successful in this area with logical arguments, breaking down how the smoking thing goes consciously. And ever since I read that book, I started to apply some of it, but it ended up being a fight, and I'm fighting the client on his own worldview, and they would just end up like this, looking at me, and it's like, okay, now I got myself into some trouble.
Yeah.
So that was something that I think broke down a little bit, a lot of rapport with many people, trying to force them into my way of helping them.
And this is actually an important point which goes to the heart of what we're talking about here, which is never disagree with their conscious mind. Because all you're going to do is trigger a defense mechanism, as you have noticed. And what we're looking for here is to figure out what is the unconscious mind actually attached to? What is the metaphor it's working from? Because in doing so, you bypass the resistance. Because you go, oh, great, now we know what country we're in.
So this whole problem or situation that, that's brought you here today, whether it's imaginary or real, we don't need to know. What's that like?
Oh, that part went fantastic. That's like walking in a bubble, not paying attention.
Okay, thank you. That's enough.
The day.
That's great.
Yeah.
So okay, right. So it's like you're walking in a bubble. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. That's enough for now. Glenn over here, then Mia.
We talked about a problem. It was insomnia, and he told me that he was willing to stay awake, and the other day he was tired. So the image was he was trying to get the last drop of the orange, but the next day the orange was completely dry. And that's the image.
That's a very nice image.
Okay. Can I just ask again, just very simply, this problem or situation that's brought you here today, what's it like?
That's how I explain that the situation.
Yeah?
So
What's it like?
I don't feel any frustration about that because actually I try to optimize.
So thank you for telling me about your feelings and your behavior. I'm asking you what it's like. It's like an orange being squeezed dry every day?
Up to the last drop.
To the last drop?
Yeah.
Okay. There's one at the back. We've also got Glenn and Mia here.
My problem was like being in a strange house, trying to find the door out. There are many doors.
Okay.
They're just leading to the
So it's
rooms.
like you're in a strange house, you're trying to find your way out, and there's lots of different rooms.
Very nice.
Doors leading to different rooms. Okay. Oh, we've got one over there. And Glenn has been waiting for a while, so let's go.
The catchphrase I got was pain in the ass.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
It's like a pain in the arse.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got one I think many can associate with.
Wait,
Sorry?
guys.
We got one I think many can associate with.
What's your name? Sorry?
Leonard.
Leonard. Hi, Leonard.
Hi. The problem we came up with at first is it's like facing a wall of tasks.
Okay, great.
Don't know where to
It's
start
like
thinking.
I'm facing a wall of tasks. Okay? Are you beginning to get clear about this now?
We'll do 2 more, and then we'll do another exercise to get an experience on this. So there's one back here, the very patient hand behind you.
Pamela and Ben down here as well.
There you go. So
Ben
you
went
go
up.
ahead, and we'll come to Pamela. Hello, Gabe, over here. Go ahead.
Okay, it's like a very difficult knot that we are trying to untie.
Thank you.
It's
Okay.
like I'm trying to untie a really difficult knot.
Go ahead.
With my partner, oddly enough, it was like, I think for both of us, being in a silent movie and make all these pantomiming gestures and stuff, and no one's hearing you.
It's like I'm in a silent movie and I can't hear anything anyone's saying.
No, like they can't hear you.
They can't
Maybe
hear
they're
her.
watching your
It's
movie.
like I'm in a silent movie. Ah, okay, right. I suspect if you explored that a little bit more, you'd find you were actually in a bubble. But we'll come on to that at another time.
Okay. So it's time to.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So let's do a quick exercise on this now. So you get the idea of the kind of things we're not really looking for, and that's the kind of things that normally people talk about. So have another chat with your partner. Any problem, including the one you might be frustrated about not being able to figure out how to do the exercise. That's a useful one too.
Yeah. What's that like?
And then the question is, when we say what's that like, you're looking for anything which is like an analogy, a simile, a metaphor, whatever these words mean to you. You're looking for some other situation that somehow describes how this particular event feels to them or how they perceive it in some ways. Okay?
And I'd just like to point out, notice how Pamela reacted there. When I tried to give her something that wasn't right. Very strong. And that's important because you don't always get it right. It's important to notice and test because people are often really much clearer about what it's not like than they are what it's like. It'll take them, and you see how people are. It's quite difficult to get through our conscious reactions, behavior, feelings, vision. And you'll see people going like this, processing as they try and answer the question what it's like.
There'll be. Go ahead. Can we have a mic up here, please?
Just make sure I understand the point of the exercise. Is it to sort of understand the subconscious map coordinates so that as they're experiencing something from their view of the world, you're able to map to that and understand how that terrain
For the moment, don't worry too much about how you're going to use it. We will get onto that. The main thing is you're looking for, and if that's the question you're asking, you are looking for more unconscious content than conscious one.
Yeah.
So beyond that, we'll come back to more stuff later.
All the fluff, all the usual stuff that they would give you in this situation, and you might choose to work with, is left brain stuff. This like question maps straight onto what their right brain representation is going to be, so that's imagistic.
So just spend 2 minutes doing that again, and then we'll come back and see if we can make it a little bit easier for the next round after this one. Okay? So just hands up a little bit if you want to talk a little about what you got the second time round, and if it was any easier or a little different. And we'll do another round and see if we can make it even easier again. Go ahead.
Well, it was a lot easier this time round,
Mm-hmm.
and the answers that we both got, I think, were much more interesting as well.
Right, excellent. So do you want to give us an example?
Yes. May I say yours? Yep. It was, the problem was like being on a bicycle and pedaling, and the foot keeps slipping off the pedal.
Beautiful. You can see a nice simple metaphor there, right? And already some material that might be useful somehow, something to kind of emerge, although we don't quite know how yet. Very nice, thank you. Who else? Go ahead.
Like walking in a maze.
Like walking in a maze, right? Again, do you see now that it's the more symbolic elements of the underlying stuff is starting to come out, right? Anyone else want to talk about something? Very quickly over here. And then we'll add another round to the exercise over here. Just put your hand up.
All right. The metaphor I got was like sleeping in the morning.
Like sleeping in the morning,
and
yeah.
the alarm clock starts ringing.
Right.
And then you push the snooze button.
Yeah.
And then again and again and again.
Very nice.
Until when you eventually wake up and get up, it's too late to have breakfast.
Very nice. So, you're giving the whole story there, right? Give him a round of applause. Now, I presume one or two of you still had a slight difficulty coming up with some kind of a metaphor or simile, is that right? Put your hands up if you had a little difficulty. So there's something you can do. It's a bit of a slightly more risky strategy with a stranger. But if you have rapport, enough rapport that they're willing to engage, there's a very simple way that you can get the unconscious material, the symbol, to come out. And basically, you needle them very politely. You misunderstand them, right? So would someone who had a problem with it like to have an example with this, just so we can have a real thing? Anyone who had a problem coming up with the metaphor? I'll happily do. You had a problem with it? Give them the mic, would you? So what's the general problem area?
I have to go to a meeting, present results on a problem I'm working on.
Right.
And I feel a little bit nervous, even though there's no need to feel that.
Great. So there's a meeting, you've got to present some stuff, you're feeling nervous, but you don't need to feel that nervousness, and you know that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what's that like? So we get the problem coming out. Kind of, I don't know, it sounds a bit like you're a Mexican bandit about to jump into a bar and shoot everyone, you know? Is that what it's like?
No.
Okay. Am I surprised? So what is it like? Or what's it more like?
Afraid of what's going to happen.
Right.
So going into a room and not knowing how they're going to react.
Oh, great. So it's like going into a room and not knowing how the people inside are going to react, right?
Yes.
So is it like jumping into a shark tank and wrestling the big fish?
Yes, perhaps.
You tell me. Or I have a sense it's more like something else.
Maybe they're not sharks, but they certainly give me a very an uneasy feeling.
Okay.
Maybe.
So, if I understand you correctly, you know that there's a room you have to go into, and you think you're going to get a hard time from the people in that room. Is that correct?
Yes, and thinking that they're not going to be satisfied.
They're not going to be satisfied. So, what are those people like?
Those kind of people are like salespeople. Big mouth, always criticizing.
Okay, so it's like walking into a room with big mouth, criticizing people that aren't going to be satisfied with what you have to say. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you see how simple it is when you poke them a little bit? Of course, we can elaborate on that and get an even richer metaphor and so on. The point is, if you get stuck on one level, don't necessarily loop around it too much. You could force that a little bit more, but you know, you can. Let me ask you this: did you feel like I was being somehow unfair, or did you dislike me for misunderstanding your situation, or was it more offensive, like he's trying to understand me, but he's not getting it yet?
Not at all. No.
Which one?
No, I meant.
He's thinking it's me now.
No. I meant to say that you were not intruding, or you were very polite.
So the attitude on the one side is kind of respectful in terms of inquiry, but you can still prod a little bit in terms of, well, what is this really like? And by presenting the false analogy, the false metaphor, this false symbol, it kind of forces them out a little bit. Now, your preference, as far as the exercise might be, it should be, not to actually present your symbol to get a reaction, because you'd rather just be coming pure out of their mind, because he almost bought into the whole shark metaphor, which would have been unfortunate, because then that's my fish in his dream, literally. However, if you're getting stuck on one level, just prod a little bit and see what comes out, and then you get a much nicer, smoother process going on. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? Yeah? So what I'd like you to do is, can you grab the mic back? Spend 2 minutes again, find a different partner, different problem, so it's a fresh thing, and sit down, just have a normal chat, and ask them what is that like. And if they don't understand it at first, feel free to misunderstand it sometimes. You have plan B and plan C, you know, give an analogy, you ask for an analogy, and then actually give a false example. The more extremely false it is, the less likely you are going to interfere with their symbol. right? Off you go. So, at the risk of punning, what was that like? Hands up. Who's getting us more of a sense that they're getting to more symbolic stuff? Can we come back here, Jimmy, at the back there? Okay. And then we'll come forward. So you guys getting more of a sense that there's some more symbolic sort of stuff coming out now, yes? Go ahead, Jimmy.
She gave me a really good symbol straight off.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat there thinking, oh shit, she's answered the question already.
Okay.
So, but I didn't. I needled her by deliberately giving a slightly ridiculous symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And then she responded with something that was much better than the first. And we both agreed that that really did touch on the matter. So,
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Fantastic, thank
So
you.
you got some tools for exploring and getting richer things back, right? Excellent. What else did you guys notice the second time round? Over here?
I think it's very
Whoa, wait, Gabe's coming.
I think it's very important tool when the person has problem to work with symbol to bring him in another, to reframe him.
Yeah, some part of the advantage of symbols is you don't get so stuck in the content and the quote-unquote logic or the reasonableness of the problem. You work in a more symbolic realm where symbolic solutions can work too, right?
Let's say for that story, what he was take, I immediately get in mind Bloody Mary drink.
A Bloody Mary drink. Okay, that's a nice metaphor. I'm not quite sure I understand it, but
No,
it's interesting.
Tomato juice, vodka, and very hot stuff.
Okay.
So that's what.
And that fit the context your partner was talking about.
With that story, what was he was taking
Okay.
at the time when you before difficult to come in, you don't know how people will accept you. And
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and the key here is you want to make sure you get as much or as close to you get their symbols out rather than introducing your things. Oh, I know what it's like. You know, kind of like when Robin was misunderstanding Pamela earlier on. Or, yeah, Pamela. You want to make sure you get what is actually going on inside them, because that's going to be the material that's going to be useful for our stories when we get around to that point later. Okay? Anyone else have a hand up here? No? Oh, one over here.
When I presented my metaphor, I got another one, and that took me off my metaphor, but it didn't really help me because I was thrown away. Like, oh, no, that's not how it feels. So for me, I would have appreciated if he would say, how is it like to be in?
So when the person asked you, you gave him a symbol, a metaphor, then he misunderstood you on purpose and that took you further away. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Or, okay, great. So this is important, right? If you're already getting to the symbolic stuff, there's no need to prod them anymore. So it's not that the last question was not necessarily something you have to do all the time. It's more to help you when you're getting to a position where you're not quite getting to the symbolic bit. In fact, in time, where we want to be getting to is where you can conversationally draw out these metaphors without them even realizing you're doing anything.
Yes,
right?
These are training wheels. This is an exercise to help you establish exactly what it is that you're looking and listening for. We wouldn't expect you to actually.
Because then what will happen is you'll have a
conversation.
You'll have a conversation like, let's say, Rob and I chatting. Hey, how guys are going, Rob? Good?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
Oh, what's up? You sound like you're something happened.
Well, I feel like I'm a little bit stuck.
Do you hear it? What do you mean, stuck in what way?
Well, it's like I'm kind of walking through treacle all the time.
Right. So it's like walking through treacle and you're kind of stuck in that.
Yeah.
Right? And there's the kind of conversation you might have with a friend in a restaurant, a cafe, bar, wherever, right? But if you don't know what to look out for, that becomes a throwaway line that you ignore, right? And you go, oh, yeah, I get you. I get like that sometimes too. You know, like for me, it's like walking through the snow and it's all heavy and stuff, right? And now we're totally talking about different things now, right? And we do that naturally because I'm sympathizing. I understand his metaphor. I'm searching for similar experiences in my life, and I give him my metaphor. That means I'm putting my fish in his dreams, and he's going, where's these fish doing here? That doesn't belong. Does that help? So these are literally training wheels to get past being too aware of it. And the nice thing is, as you become more aware of it, you'll hear these things popping out constantly anyways.
So let's go to conversational hypnosis to get on with this.
Exactly. We'll get into more conversational stuff as we get on with this. This is training wheel stuff now. So should we add some more
Yeah, sure.
choices?
So to move this on to the next stage, we're going to give you some more choices, some more questions just to ask, and variations on this theme. And we'd like you to consider some situation, some area where you have a victory, where you have a triumph, where you have a positive
where you did great,
experience.
where you're proud of, where you feel happy about, a wonderful moment you've experienced, a touching moment, something just wildly positive. And then just have a chat with them again and see if you can get their symbols to come out. But now you have some more questions around that, like what is that like? What kind of, they'll give you, like, for example, what kind of stuck is that, right? Well, it's like walking through a treacle, all right? Is there anything else about that treacle that is, you know, about that stuckness in that treacle?
Well, it kind of clings onto my feet, you know, when I try, and every time I try and take a next step, it's just like really hard.
Are we getting clear in terms of how he's starting to feel about this, right? And then, importantly, folks, at this stage, start feeding back exactly what they're saying, right? So it's kind of like you're in treacle and you're stuck, and every time you try and move your feet, the treacle is stuck to your feet, and it's hard to lift them up, right? Yeah. So that sort of stickiness of the treacle, what is that like?
Well, it's like, well, it kind of goes on forever. You know?
It goes on forever?
Yeah.
Right. So you have like, you're kind of stuck in this treacle, and every time you try and take a step, it just...
Yeah, it's like an ocean of treacle. Actually, it's like Western Supermare at low tide.
That's a lot of treacle. Okay. So do you see how you naturally start pulling out the bigger metaphor? Again, right now, we're doing it mechanically, just to get sensitive to these things. In time, you'll be able to do a little more conversationally. So let's take, again, 2 minutes apiece, different partner, and this time ask them about something really positive, happy, vibrant in their life. Off you go. So is it getting easier yet? Yeah? Are you starting to get the sense of these symbols coming out and so on, yes? Any questions on that so far? So we're going to have a break now in a minute. A couple of things. First of all, when you go into the break, you will, of course, be having chit-chat. That's kind of what happens. So I'm going to invite you to listen out for the hints that there's a metaphor underlying the kind of conversations you're having. And if you should, you know, be moved to ask a question like, what's that like? Or, no, that pigeon you were talking about, what kind of pigeon exactly is that, right? Then I really can't prevent you from doing that. You know, in the break, it's your own time, and you can do whatever you want. All right, let's take 15 minutes. Off you go.